They sat there, smiling, while reading a will that erased me. And when the lawyer handed over my grandmother's secret letter, every smug look vanished. Hi, I'm Elaine. For years, I paid their bills, cleaned up their messes, and stayed quiet until I realized they were rewriting our family legacy without me in it. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you protected? When silence was your loyalty, but their betrayal was strategy. Tell me, if you uncovered proof they stole everything you helped build, would you walk away or fight to reclaim it? Let's go back to the moment I found the paper trail that changed everything. I knew I wasn't invited the moment I saw the parking overflow stretch 2 blocks down Timberleaf Drive. Balloons in cream and gold fluttered on the mailbox. A banner hung above the front porch read, "Celebrating 10 years of Callista. No Strahd. No family. Just her." I parked across the street and sat behind the wheel. Hands still on the steering, breath shallow. I didn't know what stung more, the exclusion or the fact that I wasn't even surprised anymore. My sister had taken over not just the family business, but apparently the family narrative. I used to believe being invisible was a phase. Lately, it felt like policy. There was a time when I believed loyalty would be enough. I remembered giving up my first solo vacation to cover a surprise tax bill on the family warehouse, selling my vintage film camera collection to pay off Callista's DUI attorney, even skipping a scholarship dinner to help mom recover from surgery. And every time, I told myself, they'll see me eventually. They didn't. That evening, I was still in work slacks, reheating leftover soup when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. "This is Gerald Holbrook," the voice said. "Your family's former estate attorney. I've been trying to follow up on the trust paperwork." "What paperwork?" I asked. He paused. "The one sent 3 months ago. Certified mail. It was signed for, but not by you." The next morning, I sat in his office. The blinds were drawn. His desk was pristine. The silence felt rehearsed. He laid a sealed envelope in front of me. Thick, cream paper, wax-stamped. "This was dropped off by your grandmother 6 months before she passed," he said. "She asked that it be given to you personally." "Then why didn't I get it?" I asked. "Your sister picked it up the day you were supposed to come in," he replied. "She said she'd deliver it." Of course she did. I broke the seal slowly, hands already cold. Inside was a notarized document, original trust papers naming me as co-beneficiary to the estate. My name, in legal ink, 50%, land, property, company shares, all of it, and a handwritten note in the margin, for Elaine. Always. Holbrook didn't say anything as I stared at it. He just lit a glass of water across the table and gave me space. When I got home, I didn't cry. I documented. I pulled receipts, invoices, scanned my email. Callista hadn't just erased me. She rerouted my mail, blocked trust transfers, and updated legal documents to exclude me. I created a folder and named it Restoration. Because revenge wasn't the goal. Truth was. They didn't forget me. They deleted me. Deliberately. Sunday came, and I arrived at the family gathering with a store-bought pie and a file folder in my bag. I wore navy slacks and a plain blouse, neutral armor. No makeup. No perfume. Just presence. As I stepped onto the porch, the wind caught a corner of the banner, fluttering it high enough to reveal an old nail scar from a previous one. Strahd Family Barbecue 2017. My name was on that one. A different time. Callista greeted me like nothing happened. "Oh, you made it," she smiled, air-kissing the space near my cheek. Her tone was honeyed, but her eyes scanned me like a TSA agent looking for weakness. In the hallway, Mom spotted me and clasped her hands. "Oh, sweetheart, it's been so long. You always preferred quiet, didn't you?" She leaned in, voice low. Let's keep things peaceful today, hmm? I looked at her, smile calm. Peace isn't the same as silence, Mom, but I'll do my part. At lunch, the food was predictably bland, catered with money that might have been half mine. Our mother raised a glass to the daughter who stayed loyal. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted copper. The pain reminded me I was still here, still real. And then Callista stood to speak. I'm proud to launch the Callista Grace Foundation, she declared. Funded by the estate. My parents believe in me. I stood quietly and walked to the dining room doorway. The chandelier above flickered slightly, as if the house itself hesitated. Isn't it strange, I said aloud, how belief skips over paperwork? A hush swept across the room. Callista froze mid-toast. A fork dropped somewhere near the wine. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. The real trust. With my name. My share. And I laid it on the table between the wine glasses and the garlic rolls. This, I said, voice steady, was never yours to take. Callista's face twisted. You're being dramatic, Elaine. No, I replied. Drama needs performance. I'm just restoring what's mine. Whispers began, small, sharp gasps from the cousins, the church friends, the neighbor with a floral dress. Dad shifted in his seat, clearing his throat, but saying nothing. Of course. Silence was his signature move. As I turned to leave, I passed the sideboard where Mom displayed the family timeline, a series of framed photos under a vinyl wall decal that read, "Together is our favorite place." I paused. The photo from San Antonio was there. Cropped. Just Mom, Dad, and Callista. I remembered that day. I had set the timer myself. Ran to the center. I was in that shot. I took it. And yet, they'd cropped me out of my own memory. I smiled. On my way out, the hallway echoed under my heels like applause without sound. From the kitchen, I heard Mom call after me, her voice soft, like she wanted to reach, but wasn't sure how. But I didn't turn back. In the quiet of my car, I took one deep breath and whispered to myself the words Grandma once told me on a Sunday afternoon long ago, while teaching me how to fold a paper crane. Justice takes time, but it always knows where to land. Today, I watched it land. The clerk at the post office stared at the screen for a few extra seconds before glancing up at me. It says the forwarding request was digitally signed under Callista Elsterud, she said, trying to sound neutral. It removed your name from the shared box 2 months ago. My throat dried. I nodded, thanked her, and walked back to my car. Outside, the Texas morning sun was sharp, but the numbness in my hands dulled everything. I sat in the driver's seat, fingers tightening around the steering wheel until the plastic creaked beneath them. They didn't just erase me from a dinner. They erased me from the system. Have you ever discovered that the people who raised you also tried to erase you? The kind of silence that's not innocent but chosen. If you've ever been kept in the dark by those who should have protected you, leave a comment number 7 below. Now let's see how deep the deletion really went. And I was about to find out how deep the deletion went. I drove to the county clerk's office in downtown Dallas, bypassing my normal route to work. No makeup. No office badge. Just a growing pile of documentation in my tote bag and a low hum in my chest that pulsed louder than any radio. Inside, the records room was stale with old air and older secrets. A row of outdated monitors blinked beneath flickering fluorescent lights. The woman at the front desk didn't look up when I spoke. I need to review deed records for 131 Timberleaf Drive, I said. All transfers in the last year. She handed me a plastic visitor badge and motioned to Terminal 3. The system loaded slowly, as if even the software hesitated to reveal the truth. I typed in the address, hit enter, and there it was. The title had been transferred 3 months ago from Ronald C. Straude and Grace Straude, jointly, to Callista Elsteraude, sole owner. No mention of trust. No co-ownership. Just clean, clinical transfer. As if I'd never existed. Then I scrolled further. Warehouse lot. Lake house. Even the storefront on Palmer Avenue that my parents claimed was just a backup retirement plan. All signed over. All to her. A knot formed in my stomach, cold and hard. I tapped into the document metadata. Notarized on February 18th. I blinked. That was the weekend Dad had a minor stroke. I had driven him to the ER. Sat beside him while the monitors beeped and the nurse adjusted his four. He was barely coherent that night. Couldn't sign a birthday card, much less a legal transfer of ownership. So who signed this? I printed the pages, breath tight, and stuffed them into my tote. My next stop was a small craftsman house on McKinney Avenue, where the retired estate attorney, Mr. Ledbetter, still took occasional clients by appointment only. He opened the door slowly, adjusting his glasses. "Elaine Straude?" he asked, voice low but firm. "Yes," I said. "I need your help." He led me into his office, wood-paneled walls, dusty volumes, and the familiar scent of old ink and old wisdom. He motioned for me to sit, and I began pulling out the documents. "I believe my father's signature on this deed is forged," I said. He leaned closer, brows tightening as he studied the page. The loop in the R is off. The tail on the D doesn't match. You're right to question this." He pulled out a magnifier and compared it to a signature on an earlier document I'd brought with me. Dad's handwriting from when he amended his living will 5 years ago. "This," Ledbetter said slowly, "was not signed by the same man." I exhaled, shaky but steady. "What does it mean legally?" He nodded. "If we can prove forgery and that your father was incapacitated at the time, it could trigger a contingency clause. One that reverts property back into a protected trust." I blinked. "My grandmother's trust?" "No," he said. "Your grandmother's." She set up a secondary provision. Quiet, but powerful. It places you as the sole trustee in the event of manipulation or medical incapacitation of your father. For a second, I couldn't breathe. Everything they thought they'd hidden had a failsafe. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I just whispered, "They didn't see this coming." He looked at me carefully. Most thieves never look for tripwires. That night, I drove home. Windows rolled up, the world outside passing in silence. I poured myself tea, but forgot to drink it. Instead, I spent 3 hours scanning every document, organizing them into folders. Real signatures versus forged, verified records, messages. I named the folder, Straude_store. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Callista. "Stop. You're not thinking clearly. You're tearing the family apart." I stared at it for a long moment, then typed, "No. I'm exposing what already was." I didn't send it. I didn't need to. I already knew my next move. The sun rose like it had something to prove. I hadn't slept, not really. Just watched the sky shift from blue-black to gold, my thoughts sharpening with the light. I wasn't tired. I was done waiting. My apartment was still. Too still. The ticking wall clock, normally background noise, sounded like a slow countdown. I walked past the bookshelf and paused beside the brass origami crane Grandma folded for me when I was 13. The one she said meant quiet courage. I placed it in my bag. Not as a symbol, as a witness. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called Norelnix. Her voice came through with that same steel-wrapped calm I remembered from our nonprofit days. "Elaine," she said, no warmth, no questions, just efficiency. "I read your email. I have an opening this morning. Bring everything." By 10:15, I was seated in her minimalist office in the Bishop Arts District, across from a glass wall that reflected my own posture, shoulders squared, jaw set. The room was white and sharp, no plants, no pictures, only a chrome pen holder and a single lamp that cast long shadows across the paperwork. She didn't ask for a backstory. She only said, "Show me." I laid the documents out like evidence at trial. The forged deed, Dad's real signature, hospital records from the day he was allegedly signing over assets, the notarization logs trace back to Monica Varel, Callista's college roommate. Norel studied them with surgical focus, highlighting sections, cross-referencing dates, building a mental map of betrayal. When she finally looked up, her words sliced clean. They didn't just steal. They coordinated it. I nodded. I want to take it back. All of it. You can, she said. But you have to decide. Are you willing to burn clean? No partial settlements. No pretty family dinners after. I didn't blink. They already buried me. I'm just digging out. She leaned back, eyes narrowed with approval. Then we go hard. By noon, the first motion was filed, a formal notice of intent to contest property transfers based on forged documentation and medical incapacity. Norel clicked submit like she was firing a bullet. Next, she said, you show them you're not bluffing. I hesitated. You mean show up? Unannounced, she replied.
Calm, prepared,
but undeniable. Outside her office, I sat in my parked car a moment longer, staring through the windshield at a father helping his daughter load a pink science project into a trunk. Ordinary. Safe. Something I never got to be. I pulled the visor mirror down, fixed my collar, and whispered. She taught me to fight with paper. Grandma would have smiled at that. That evening, I drove to my parents' house, not to visit, to confront. The street was too quiet. The same chipped brick path, the magnolia tree we planted the summer before college. It all felt staged. Manufactured nostalgia. A house dressed as a home. The door opened before I could knock. Grace Straude stood there in her pressed slacks and coral blouse like she was expecting company, not a reckoning. Elaine, she said, blinking. You didn't call. No, I replied. I didn't. Inside, the house smelled like cinnamon candles and denial. The old wall clock still chimed at 15 past, slightly off. Dad was in the den, TV on mute, flipping through bills. He looked up but didn't stand. His eyes darted to the envelope in my hand, then away. Callista was in the kitchen, wine in hand, barefoot like she owned the floorboards. When she saw me, her lips curved. You again. I placed a sealed envelope on the kitchen counter. What's this? She asked, voice sugary. Notice of intent, I said. Filed today. You'll get the official copy tomorrow, but I figured you'd appreciate the preview. Callista's smile faltered, barely. Grace stepped closer. Sweetheart, is this really necessary? I turned to her slowly. You gave her power of attorney without telling me. You removed my name from everything. You let her redirect my mail, erase my title, rewrite my place in this family. Her face tightened. You've always been more sensitive. There it was. That word again. Weaponized softness. I'm not sensitive, I said. I'm strategic. And you just declared war on the daughter who paid your mortgage for 6 years. Callista scoffed, swirling her glass. All this because of a few pieces of paper? No, I said coldly. All this because you forged one. I reached into my bag and pulled out the notarization log. Monica Varel, your roommate. She notarized the warehouse transfer while Dad was in the hospital. I was there, remember? CT scans.
slurred speech.
He couldn't sign a check, let alone a deed. Callista's eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. I handed the log to Grace. You can ask Monica yourself. Or wait for the court summons. Grace's fingers trembled as she held the page. A wine glass clinked gently against the countertop. Somewhere, the dishwasher hummed low and rhythmic, absurdly normal in the middle of this. Callista stepped forward, face inches from mine. You're just bitter. I'm just awake, I whispered. And this time, as I walked out, I passed the family photo wall. The same one from my childhood. Except now, the frame with my graduation picture was gone, replaced by a watercolor of Callista's charity gala. I didn't flinch. Some people rewrite history with ink. I came back with proof. The brunch invite came via text, like a peace offering drizzled in honey. Stone Cafe. 11:30 a.m. Mom says it's neutral ground. Just talk. Don't wear drama. I stared at the screen, then set it down slowly. Neutral ground, coming from Callista, was like a wolf suggesting we meet in the forest. Still, I typed back. I'll be there. Not to reconcile, not to explain, but to study them in their chosen terrain. That morning, I wore slate blue. Clean lines, soft collar, no jewelry, like armor made of silence. I reached for my bag and slid in two things, the folded trust claws and Grandma's brass origami crane. The one she kept on her desk with the base inscription, "A whisper can still cut." The cafe was glass-walled, designed for daylight and performance. Overpriced croissants, latte art, minimalist plates, like emotions weren't welcome unless plated with precision. Jazz played low overhead, but the rhythm couldn't mask tension. They were already seated when I arrived. Callista wore a fitted ivory dress, her curls glossy, eyes outlined with a touch too much gold. Mom, ever the diplomat, sported a coral blazer and that strained smile she reserved for events with unpredictable relatives. Dad was in muted gray, eyes downcast, hands folded in his lap, like he'd been told to wait quietly. Callista stood first. Evie, she cooed, kissing the air near my cheek. Glad you came. Of course, I said flatly. I never turn down a gathering when the stakes are financial. She chuckled. Still dramatic, I see. No, I said, sliding into my chair. Still direct. The server brought mimosas. I declined. Callista ordered for everyone she always did, and I watched her move like she belonged on that stage. Her voice carried, her gestures precise. Even her breath came out in curated cadence. Mom opened first. Elaine, we didn't ask you here to fight. Just to clarify things. I raised an eyebrow. Clarify? Or control the narrative before it slips?
She paused.
We're family, and families make mistakes. Yours tend to notarize them. Callista's smile thinned. Dad shifted, but said nothing. The glass in his hand clinked softly, a tiny tremor he probably didn't think I'd notice. Mom pressed on, voice softer now. You've always been the emotional one. We thought handling the estate through Callista would ease your burden. I sipped my water. It tasted faintly of lemon and pretense. You thought cutting me out would make me disappear. It almost worked. Callista leaned forward. This bitterness, it doesn't suit you. And theft suits you perfectly, I snapped. You're dressed for it. Her eyes flared, but her tone stayed sweet. You really want to take this public? Make a spectacle? I already did. Filing a legal motion tends to do that. The table tensed. Behind us, a fork scraped against a porcelain plate. The waiter flinched mid-step. Callista glanced at Dad. Say something. He looked up, and for the first time in months, he really looked at me. You never said you wanted it. I didn't think I had to, I replied. When I paid off the property tax, when I handled logistics for the shop, when I was listed on the trust, you think I did that for fun? His lips parted, but nothing came. You know what hurt? I said, voice calm but cutting. It wasn't losing the estate. It was realizing you all thought I would notice. That I was the safe one to screw over. Callista sighed, tired of pretending. You were always the sidekick, Elaine. Reliable. Predictable. You were never built to lead. I leaned in. And you were never built to win without cheating. Which is why you're panicking now. Mom stood slightly. Girls, enough. People were starting to watch.
Good.
I wanted them to. Let the cracks show. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folded paper. Since we're sharing truths, here's a copy of the original clause from Grandma's trust. The one that grants me veto power on all transfers before I turn 35. Callista blinked. That's not possible. It is, I said, and it activates in 6 days. Dad took the paper, hands trembling slightly. He read silently, lips moving with the words, and I caught the flicker of something in his eyes. Shame, maybe. Or memory. Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. You erased me, I said. But the paper remembered. Have you ever been pushed aside, only to be needed later, when it's convenient? That quiet ache when you realize you were never part of US, just part of the solution. If you understand that kind of hurt, leave a comment number 9 below. Let's see how much louder truth can speak when it's backed by power. Callista snatched the document and scanned it. Her face paled. I stood up, smoothing my blouse. Next time you pick a cafe, make sure the acoustics don't catch your lies. As I turned to leave, I passed the waiter who had served us. He gave a small, sympathetic nod. He'd heard enough. Outside, the air was sharp and clear. And for the first time in years, I wasn't holding my breath. I was holding power. In the passenger seat, the crane sat beside the folder. Silent. Balanced. Its wings caught the sun through the windshield, casting a fractured shadow across my lap, like a blade, thin and bright. The courthouse wasn't grand. Beige walls. Neutral carpet. No drama. No mahogany. Just long fluorescent lights that hummed with bureaucratic indifference. But, to me, it was a battlefield. The clerk called my name like it was just another file. Straude versus Bundy, courtroom C. Norel walked beside me down the hallway, her heels silent, her briefcase steady. She didn't look at me when she spoke. This is about exposure, not explosion. You don't need to win today. You need to open the wound. I nodded. I want them to feel it. She didn't blink. They will. Inside, Callista sat like a poster for cold confidence. Gray blazer, high ponytail, not a hair out of place. Grace and Ronald flanked her, trying to shrink into invisible folds of regret. They didn't speak when I walked in. Good. I didn't need words, I had documents. The judge entered. The bailiff called for quiet. Then it began. Ms. Nix, you may proceed with your summary. Norel stood, spine straight, tone sharp. Your Honor, we're here to review the accelerated transfer of estate assets under suspicious conditions, including forged documents, abuse of power of attorney, and a willfully concealed trust clause that invalidates said transfers. We are not asking for empathy. We are asking for accountability. Then she played the tape. The courtroom speakers echoed Callista's voice, soft and unmistakably cruel. She won't check. She just wants to be loved. Then Grace's laugh. Ronald's quieter murmur. Do it before she turns 35. I didn't look at them. I watched the judge. He didn't flinch. Is this recording verified? Yes, Your Honor. Time-stamped and obtained legally from a household source. Callista shot to her feet. This is taken out of context. Sit down, Miss Straude. The judge said. You'll have your turn. And she did. Her lawyer, A young man, too confident for his resume, stumbled through rebuttals, claimed good faith, claimed family misunderstanding, claimed I'd left voluntarily and didn't want the burden. I stood when asked. My voice didn't waver. I didn't walk away. I was erased. By signatures I didn't give. By silence I didn't deserve. Then I handed over the forged deed with Monica Varel's notary stamp and the hospital log showing Dad was sedated during the signing. Miss Straude, the judge asked, "Are you requesting criminal referral?" I paused, then met Callista's eyes. She smirked, like she thought I wouldn't go that far. I turned back to the bench. Not yet, but I reserved the right to. We broke for recess. In the hallway, I stood by the window overlooking downtown. I could see my reflection faintly superimposed on the glass. Me, the woman they thought would stay small. The woman who held the truth like a scalpel now. Callista approached. Alone. "You think this makes you strong?" she hissed. I didn't turn. "It makes me free." She stepped closer, voice low. "You'll ruin everything. They're old. They don't have the strength for this." They had strength to betray me. Callista's mask cracked, just slightly. "You want revenge." "No," I said. "I want restoration. But if you force my hand, I will take both." She stared, searching for weakness. I offered none. Back inside, the judge returned, expression unreadable. Given the gravity of the evidence and the potential for irreversible harm, I am issuing an immediate injunction on all estate transfers. Further review will be conducted in closed hearings. Until that time, all property assets are frozen. Callista's jaw clenched. Grace covered her mouth. Ronald closed his eyes. The gavel fell like thunder. As we exited the courtroom, the fluorescent lights buzzed louder, as if the walls themselves were reacting to what had unfolded. In the hallway, the carpet swallowed our steps, but I could still feel the weight of their eyes behind me. I passed the framed photo of the court's founding justices. The polished glass reflected Callista's figure a few steps behind. For the first time, she looked dented. Not broken, she never allowed herself to be.
But I saw it.
The chip in her armor. Outside, storm clouds gathered at the edge of the sky, casting long shadows across the stone steps. A wind picked up, scattering dry leaves across the concrete, crackling beneath my heels. I stopped for a second, just to breathe it in. The tension. The shift. Back in my car, I paused before getting in. I opened the glove box and removed a velvet pouch. Inside, the brass crane gleamed faintly in the dimming light. Its edges were worn now, one wing slightly bent from years of handling. I whispered softly. She told me once, paper could cut. Even silence could. The weight of that memory filled my chest like a tide. It wasn't the courtroom that changed me. It was realizing I no longer needed permission to be right. As I drove away, the courthouse in the rearview mirror shrank, but the shadow it had cast over me began to dissolve. In the passenger seat, the brass crane rested next to the red-marked folder. Its reflection shimmered on the windshield as lightning blinked behind the clouds. In that light, brief, brilliant, it looked like a blade. The house looked smaller than I remembered. It was still the same polished brick, still the same magnolia tree leaning slightly toward the sidewalk. But as I pulled into the driveway, something in me registered a shift. I wasn't coming here as a daughter. I wasn't coming here as the forgotten one. I was coming to finish what I started. Callista opened the door wearing white, not cream, not beige, but stark white. The kind you wear to a christening or a coronation. Her eyes skimmed me, like I was a smudge on her lens. "Glad you could make it," she said. "We're all waiting in the living room." We meant Grace and Ronald, perched like stage props on the velvet couch, as if this was a reunion, not a reckoning. There was a folder on the coffee table. Callista reached for it the moment I sat down. "This," she began, "is just a formality. A final draft of the division agreement. It's been reviewed by a third-party mediator." I raised a hand. Before she could continue, I unzipped my case and began laying out my documents, quietly, precisely, one page at a time. My fingers didn't tremble. Callista's voice dipped. "What is this?" "The original living trust," I said, "signed 5 years ago, with both our parents' signatures, before any of this revisionist history started." Ronald shifted, suddenly smaller in his recliner. "And this," I continued, sliding a second page toward them, "is the notarized deed transfer from last month, with a notary registered to Monica Varel. Callista, I think you remember her." Callista's mouth twitched. "This doesn't mean—" "This letter," I said, placing it flat on the table, "is from my attorney, confirming that all of these transactions, every single one, can be contested, and that forgery is grounds for both civil and criminal action." Grace opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't give her time. "You called this meeting to finalize a theft. I came to deliver its undoing." Callista leaned back, arms crossed. "You're bluffing." I didn't flinch. "Then take me to court," she scoffed. "You're vindictive, Evie. You always have been. You ran off to college and came back thinking you were better than us." I tilted my head.
No.
"I came back because no one else was willing to remind you. I didn't need your permission to exist." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Even the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to pause. Grace tried again. "You never said you wanted the estate. We assumed you. Assumed I'd stay quiet." I cut in. "Because I always have. Because I cleaned up the messes, paid the bills, hid the shame. But I didn't come here to remind you. I came to reclaim what was mine." Just then, my phone buzzed. I clicked it to speaker. "This is Attorney Norel Nix," came the voice, cool and sharp. "If we do not receive confirmation of mutual resolution by Monday 9 a.m., we will proceed with a formal injunction and asset review." Silence. I stood slowly. "You've had your say. This is mine." As I turned, my eyes landed on the bookshelf. A photo frame from our trip to San Antonio. It showed only 3 people, Callista, Grace, and Ronald. I remembered that day. I was there. I took the photo. They'd cropped me out. I stepped forward, flipped open the frame. Behind the printed photo, the original was folded neatly. There I was between them, arms slung around Dad's shoulder, sunlight in my eyes. I slid the original into my bag. "They didn't erase me completely," I said softly. "Just tried." At the door, Callista hissed, "You think this changes everything?" I paused, hand on the knob. "No," I said. "It restores everything." I didn't drive home immediately. I sat in the car for nearly 15 minutes, engine silent, the folder still in my lap. The house behind me loomed quiet, like a mausoleum of curated memories. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. But I did feel something new, something that hummed beneath my ribs like current. Relief. A quiet, startling relief that I hadn't needed to scream to be heard. The sky was a pewter gray now, thick with overcast. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like a verdict still echoing. As I turned onto the main road, a sudden wind swept across the windshield, shaking loose a brittle magnolia petal that had stuck to the glass. It fluttered for a second, then disappeared. At home, I turned the lights low. The space greeted me not with silence, but with steadiness. The tick of the hallway clock, the gentle whir of the fan, The normalcy of solitude, finally untainted. I laid the folder down on the kitchen table, smoothed its edges, and sat. Slowly, I reached into the pouch again and removed the brass crane. Its surface was dulled now, almost matte, but still sharp at the folds. I held it in both palms and whispered, "You weren't just a gift. You were a warning." I thought of Grandma's hands, how steady they had been even when her legs faltered. How she taught me to fold paper as if every edge was a boundary to be respected. How she looked me in the eye that day and said, "You protect with silence, but you fight with paper." I set the crane next to the trust clause. Together, they were everything they tried to overwrite. In the half-darkness, the gold of the origami caught a sliver of street light leaking through the blinds. It glinted like it had teeth. I didn't touch it again. I didn't need to. It had already done what it was meant to do. Like me. I no longer carried the weight of proving I belonged. The silence that once surrounded me has been replaced by clarity, dignity, and a peace that doesn't require anyone's permission. Sometimes, the loudest justice is written in ink, not rage. When people try to erase you, let them. But make sure the truth is written so clearly, it outlives every lie. Have you ever had to reclaim your worth after being betrayed by the people closest to you? Share your story or your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. And if this story stirred something in you, follow us for more real-life reckonings that echo truth.